So a few days ago, Chicken's Tabletop Crafting did a video about making trees. I've seen the technique used before, so it wasn't totally new, but since I'm redoing my terrain in 10mm, I thought I'd give it a shot with a tweak or two of my own. I started with some hemp string, though any natural fiber string will do. Cut this up into short lengths. Here I went for about 5cm. You don't need to be precise, and in fact having a variety of lengths is better. Now, the pieces were the right length, but they were too thick to use, so once I had a fair amount of string cut up, I started unraveling them. The string I used had 3 strands, so I just broke it up into that. If the individual strands unravel, just tighten them up again. We only need them to stick together until we finish the armature of the tree, so it will do for now. As I unravel the strings, I try to distribute the strands from the same string rather than keeping them together. This gives a more random effect later on the finished trees. Once all the strands were unraveled and lined up, I took a length of wire. If you're doing an individual tree, this should be around 4 times the length of the tree you're making. Next, I applied a tiny amount of superglue to part of the wire and glued some of the strands to it. You don't need a great bond here, this is just to hold the strands in place till we secure them, so you don't have to do any juggling. Almost anything tacky will do, but I found superglue to be faster and cleaner than other options. The length of this area will shrink by between half and 3/4 soon, so make sure that you make it a little larger than you want your final tree to be. Packing more strands in will make the tree bushier, so this is a good place to experiment. I added distinct areas of strands to this wire, so this piece will give me multiple trees. When I was happy with the strands, I folded the wire over like a hairpin and got out my drill. Make sure the drill is on the slowest speed, and if it has one, not in hammer mode. I put the open end of the wires directly into the chuck and lock the loop in place with my pliers. Do not use dowels, pens or pencils here, as the wire can break them. Definitely don't use your fingers or you're not going to be able to pick your nose again. Once the drill has wrapped the wire, we're good. I cut the wire into separate armatures. Remember that part of the trunk will be buried in the base, so leave it as long as you can. You can always trim it off later. At this point the armatures looked like ghetto toilet brushes, so I gave them a haircut. Depending on whether you're going for a natural growth or a more cultivated finish, you can trim them more or less regularly. You can even brush it a bit if you like, but since I don't have any hair anywhere I can show online outside of OnlyFans, I don't own a brush. I was happy with the general shape of the trees now, so it was time to add some foliage. I sprayed the trees dark grey, and while the paint was still wet, I dumped a lot of flock over them. You could go for brown, but I find that a bit too strong for 10mm. The first coverage will probably not hit everything, so once you've given the paint time to dry, repeat the process, this time using matte varnish. This will lock the previous layer in place and allow you to stick more flock on. You can also experiment with different types of flock for different textures. Once you're happy, a final layer of varnish will seal everything off. To base the trees, I prepared some small pieces of terrain. These were done in the same way as my desert hills, just painted differently. I drilled small holes where I wanted the trees to go and glued them in with tacky glue. I didn't bother to do any detail on the trunks, as these won't be visible on the table, but you can certainly detail yours if that's the way you roll. I really like this method of making trees. It looks good and you can easily knock out a table's worth of trees in a weekend. I also like that in the scale you can make some pretty tall trees, unlike 28mm ones which tend to be pretty small for the sake of practicality. If you enjoyed this content, you might want to check out my Patreon, since I have one of those now. The link is in the description below. If you just want to see more tabletop terrain, you can also check out this playlist here. Bye!